Advantage of it, like you said, though. The big fourth down there to extend that drive, and then, of course,
how about this mistake? Maher's troubles continue.
Odd NFL rules you didn't know existed. The NFL can be quite easily be America's sport of choice, coming above even basketball and baseball. One reason being the fact that football can be fairly easy to understand. However, there can still be truly weird things under the surface that we don't know about. Here are some of the most bizarre NFL rules that you probably didn't know even existed. Number 20. The fair catch kick. Did you know there were more ways to score 3 points at a time than just making the field goal? After a fair catch has been received from either a kick or a punt, the receiving team is allowed to run a play or a fair catch kick. Of course, running a play is what almost all teams opt for. A fair catch kick is a kick that occurs in place at the beginning of a drive. The last fair catch kick that was successful was in 1976. Number 19. End zone celebrations. This rule isn't as bizarre as it is terrible. Rather than giving the football fan base an entertaining game of football with fun celebrations, the NFL has chosen to ban anything that crosses the line. There are many problems with this rule, but the worst problem is the fact that the officials get to decide what crosses the line and what doesn't. So at the Lambeau Field, the Packers can do a Lambeau leap, whereas the same player could get penalized for doing the same thing at any other stadium. Number 18. Out-of-bounds kicks. Put recently under spotlight by the Green Bay Packer utility man Ty Montgomery, a receiving player can step out of bounds and touch the ball on a kickoff in order to take it to the 40-yard line. Why is that? Because if the ball is touched by the player while out of bounds, then technically the ball will be out of bounds too. It's hard to understand what the thought process was behind making this cheap rule. Number 17. Illegal leverage. The defensive side of the ball is not allowed to push or pull one another during PATs or field goal attempts. The reason behind this rule is that it would end up giving the defense too much leverage. If any player violates this rule, they would have a 15-yard penalty and a head scratch from the audience back home. You might need Primo Coffee service to catch this rule being violated on a given Sunday. Number 16. The drop kick. Did you know that the quarterback can advance the ball down the field by dropping it on the ground and kicking it off the bounce? Well, it's possible. Back in the 50s and the 60s, this rugby-type move during a play was actually pretty common. However, the last time it happened in the NFL was in 2005 by Doug Flutie. Number 15. Out-of-bounds punt coverage. When the football is punted away from the team, their defense is supposed to rush downfield to corral the returner. If any of the kicking team's players go out of bounds voluntarily, even if they stay out of the play, they will get an instant 15-yard penalty. This rule was set so that teams don't try to get an advantage by racing up the field out of bounds. So maybe this rule makes some sense. Number 14. Back-to-back timeouts. It doesn't matter how bad your coach is. Your team will never be allowed to call timeouts within a single period of dead ball action. If a coach does attempt to call 2 timeouts in a row, his team will be penalized 15 yards on account of unsportsmanlike conduct. We guess a coach not knowing the rules is pretty unsportsmanlike. Number 13. Free kick returns. The kicking team can try and kill the ball by touching it before the opposing team does on the kickoff. However, once the ball has been touched, the return team is allowed to make a play on it without a worry. But the return team cannot turn the ball over after it has been touched by the other side, even if they only fumble it. Try to figure that rule out, because we sure as hell can. Number 12. Automatic coin toss laws. At the beginning of the game and at the beginning of the overtime period, the players have a coin toss. But if any team fails to get their players on the field fast enough to observe the coin toss, then they are automatically considered losers to the toss. Nobody knows why this rule even exists, since it never happens that a team does not just show up for the coin toss, making this rule quite an odd one. Number 11. Possession after scores. It's assumed that after the score is made, the defensive team has a chance to run their offense. However, this isn't exactly the case. Deciding if they want the ball or not is actually the team that gets scored on. If the team wants, it can even decide to kick off again anyway. Number 10. Palpably unfair act. Ever thought what would happen if your favorite team is about to score a touchdown with the running back sprinting down the field alone, who is suddenly surprised to find the coach on the other team running onto the field and tackling him? This would be considered a palpably unfair act in NFL. This rule was added to the rulebook to stop any cheating from happening. The referees all have to be in favor for this kind of rule to be called. If you want an example of why the rule is necessary, just take a look at Mike Tomlin stopping Jacoby Jones from scoring a touchdown return. Number 9. First down on a punt. A team punting means it's fourth down. Usually, the only way to get a first down is either through a penalty or by running a play. However, the team that is punting can get a first down by hitting an opposing player with the ball, then picking it back up. Imagine a punter flubbing a kick and it doinks off a linebacker. The ball will be live. Then, and if the punting team recovers in team, it will be a first down. Number 8. Multiple field goals in one series. If you typically kick a field goal and miss, you would turn the ball over. That's because field goals typically happen on the fourth down. If any team tries a field goal kick on second down, they can try again as long as they recover the ball. This can be quite a rare scenario that you usually only see come to life in late game scenarios when teams are fearful of their kick being blocked. Number 7. Consecutive onside kick attempts. If the ball is kicked out of bounds in a regular kickoff, the player will be penalized. But if the ball is kicked out of bounds on an onside kick attempt, the player might end up getting a second chance. Much like bunting in baseball, onside kicks can get you 2 options, but a third one will just strike you out. Number 6. No touching the snap. When a quarterback lines up under center, they'll be the first player to touch the ball. If the ball is snapped between the legs of a quarterback or over his head, no other player on either defense or offense will be able to touch it. If someone on offense does touch it before the quarterback does, it will be considered a false start, and a penalty will be given. And if the defense touches it, it will be ruled dead, and a 5-yard penalty will be assessed. Number 5. Leapfrog is illegal. There is typically a gap between the offensive snapper and the defensive line on PATs. The reason this gap exists is because defenders are aware that they're not allowed to jump right over the offensive player. This is known as leapfrog, and it's just another version of illegal leverage that we just talked about. Number 4. Receivers thrown down in certain formations. Typically, no player is allowed to touch the wide receiver after 5 yards unless they're making a play on the ball. However, if your offense lines up in a punting formation, then the rules are quite different. In a fake punt scenario like such, receivers can be knocked around as much as the defenders want. Number 3. Teams DQing their starting quarterback. The 3 quarterbacks are typically carried by NFL teams on their roster. However, a rule does exist that says if you bring in your 3rd stringer before the 4th quarter, then your first 2 quarterbacks will be disqualified from returning to the action field. And that's not even the biggest twist on the rule. The 3rd stringer will not be allowed to come into the game for anything, or else the rule will still apply. Number 2. A team can win in overtime by 9 points. All thanks to the new overtime rules, teams can now win a game by up to 9 points in overtime. One team can score a field goal on their possession and then get a pick 6 on defense, ending up with a winning game on a 9-point margin. Number 1. Point play. When it comes to the NFL, there's a way to score a single point called the conversion safety. This conversion safety is only awarded when a defending player hits the ball out of the back of the end zone on either an extra point, 2-point conversion attempt. However, the last time this happened was in 1940. And that's a wrap on odd NFL rules you didn't know existed. What do you think about the relevant question to the video? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this. See you in the next one.